because we've given 3% of revenue to these 3 good causes that we support, every consultant feels it with every placement. The client, after every placement, gets a menu of which charity would you like to choose, where that 3% of this placement will go, and it even breaks it down to how many trees they want to plant, so it's really, really tangible and you can feel it every day. So it completely changes the mindset of our consultants, our team, our clients.
Welcome to the Resilient Recruiter Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Whitby, and today we're joined by Leo Hewett. After over a decade of experience working for large corporates up to director level, Leo decided to take the plunge and launch his own ethical recruitment business, Core3, specializing in finance and accounting talent.
I was quite detached from billing for quite a number of years. My confidence to be able to set up and build my own business and get back on the tools, probably lacking for a while. And then COVID came and we were all forced back on the phones. As leaders, we had to lead from the front. Weirdly, I quite enjoyed it. And I was just like, I'm still good at this. I can still do it. I realized that, I do really want to do that. And that dream that I had of setting up a business that had real purpose behind it was just growing and growing and growing.
Leo believes that business has a bigger role to play in society than just making a profit. Being future conscious and aware of how our actions affect people and the planet is more important now than it has ever been. This is why Core3's purpose is to pioneer the conscious recruitment mindset, putting people, planet, and progress first. One of the ways they do that is they pledge 3% of their sales to their local community and the environment.
It's great to see the impact that we've had so far in 2.5 years since we launched. We've given back over £75,000 to our local community and the environment. We've planted 23,000 trees. We've removed over 300 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. We volunteered, over 250 hours.
Alongside their B Corp certification, Core3 are proud to have won multiple awards since launching in 2022, including the REC Startup of the Year and also Business of the Year from Business Leaders. They have their own podcast called Conscious Finance Podcast. Leo, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been on my radar for a while because, you're showing up in my LinkedIn newsfeed all the time. And, because of the awards that you guys are winning and a relatively short space of time. I mean, you've only been going for, I guess, a couple of years now. But actually, you maybe aren't aware of this, but we have another connection in that your mom, Louise Hewett, was a client of mine for many years, Hewett Recruitment, and she is a legend in UK recruiting. And so I'm fascinated to learn. Like, you almost must have grown up in the recruitment industry. What was that like, having your mom with a really successful, well-known independent recruitment agency?
Yeah, amazing, really. I mean, I think it's, I've said it many times before, she's my biggest role model. She raised me as a single mum, and to balance...
I didn't know that part.
Yeah, and to balance, growing a recruitment business whilst raising 2 kids is a feat in itself. But yeah, she's just instilled those values in me that when I watched her build her business as a kid growing up, and in my elder years, just really was quite inspired by how she used her business as a vehicle for good. So she did an awful lot for her local community in Worcestershire. She always gave back. She always did a lot for charity. And she's been recognised, as you're probably aware, many ways of not just the good work she did in recruitment, but also what she's done for her community. And I think that's what instilled those values in me, which is ultimately where the Core3 idea sort of evolved.
Amazing. And then, so I guess you could have gone 2 ways, right? You could have avoided recruitment because you'd seen kind of like that was what you grew up and almost decided, I don't want to do that. So what was it that made you decide, hey, I'm actually going to go into this industry? Because you've had a really successful career with Michael Page and then Robert Half and moved your way up, to quite senior roles. Why did you decide to get into recruiting?
Well, funny enough, you're right, actually. I did avoid it for a long period of time for exactly that reason, because my mum did it and I wanted to, carve my own path and
Yeah.
create something different for my career. So I started out when I was in uni. I was running student club nights and events and parties and festivals and things like that. And then when I graduated, I ended up becoming an area manager for the Southwest, and then eventually UK marketing manager for this events company. And then I went traveling with my now wife and just reflected really on life and what I wanted to do. And I realized I reached a bit of a ceiling in marketing, especially in events marketing. What I was doing, there wasn't much more progression really. So I came back and I was a little bit of a loss, and I almost sort of didn't know what I wanted to do, and came home with no job and no prospects other than the career path I had before. And I just decided, and I realized actually mum and I are really, really similar. And if she's that good in recruitment, maybe I would be. So
Awesome.
I just took the plunge and joined Michael Page because I thought going to a big corporate would give me good foundations and training and things like that.
Yeah.
And then joined Robert Half not long after. And haven't looked back since really. So I just sort of, I guess everyone says that, don't they? Just sort of fell into it. But I almost avoided it purposely for a long time, but then got into it because actually it does align with my personality type quite well, I would say.
That makes total sense. And I guess that it's quite a lot of people when they fall into recruitment, so to speak, they actually don't know what it is. But you were going in with your eyes wide open, right? And kind of knowing what you were signing up for. But was there like not a conversation around, hey, why don't you join Hewett Recruitment?
Yeah, definitely. And there was thought of that, and getting a good grounding with the big corporates would then set me up nicely if I ever wanted to work for the family business. But I think my sister got involved in Hewett Recruitment as well, so she's now the one of the owners and
Yeah,
MDs. And at that point, it was just I felt that keeping family and work separate was a good plan. Um,
definitely. I can
and I've
relate to
got
that. Yeah.
got an amazing relationship with both my mum and my sister, and I wouldn't want work or business to sort of muddy that in any way.
Mhm.
So, and also I wanted to create something new and fresh and different, and something that challenged the status quo, and that was quite fresh in the recruitment sector. So, I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit in me. So even before I decided I wanted to do recruitment, I wanted to have my own business of some kind. I just didn't know what it was. So I think I really needed to scratch that itch at the same time.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I kind of anticipated that would probably be the reason is mixing family and business. Obviously, it's worked for your sister, which is awesome. And I believe Ben Mannion is the other
That's
owner,
right.
right? So I knew
Yeah.
I met Ben way back, like, oh man, it must be well when I was working with Louise, it must be 15 years ago or so.
Oh wow.
Um, so then 2022, and what inspired you to launch Core 3?
So, like I said, I've always wanted to do it, but every time I felt like I was getting close to having the confidence or the bravery to take the plunge, Robert Half kept putting really good jobs in front of me. I was like, oh,
Okay.
it's really annoying. They've done it again, and it was just another promotion or another line of business they wanted me to launch, or taking on another brand or branch. They were great in terms of what they did for me in terms of progression and development and things like that. And funnily enough, just before I resigned, they dangled another one in front of me, and I was like, "Oh, they're doing it again. How do they know?" But I think for me, it was I was there for quite a while, so knocking on a decade, and I had reached sort of a director level. I was running a couple of branches, all lines of business, temp and perm. But I've grown up through finance and accounting as my specialism at consultant level. But I was quite detached from billing for quite a number of years. So my confidence to be able to set up and build my own business and get back on the tools was probably lacking for a while. And then COVID came and we were all forced back on the phones. And as leaders, we had to lead from the front and get back to it. And I was never too distant from the client side. I've always loved getting in pitches, and that's my sort of party trick, is that the pitch and selling retainers and winning business exclusively. That's what I love. So I've always been involved in pitches, but I've never had to sort of in the last few years, I hadn't had to pick up and fill jobs and do the whole 360. So COVID forced me to do that, to win business, because the vast majority of the team were furloughed. So the best of the best were remaining on the tools, and as leaders, we had to lead from the front. So and actually, weirdly, I quite enjoyed it, and I was just like, I'm still good at this. I can still do it, because early on, I was one of the top performers for the perm line of business in the UK, and globally went to their Reach for the Stars in Vegas, which is the top 3% of performers globally. But if distance makes you forget things sometimes, and I forgot that I could still do the job, and actually getting on the phones, I realized, I could do this. So then when in that time, I think a lot of reflection happened for everybody, because you're spending so much time in lockdown looking at four walls and thinking there must be more to life than this. So I realized that, I do really want to do that. And that dream that I had of setting up a business that had real purpose behind it was just growing and growing and growing. And then I had that confidence back that I could do the business development and the 360 role. So then, again, it was a chat with my mum not long after, probably about a year after. It came back from the pandemic. We did a record-breaking year for our region in Robert Half. So I felt like I was leaving it on a really good high. I left a good infrastructure and team behind, so I wasn't leaving them in the lurch. And at that point, is I had another little wobble. My mum, chatting to my mum, and I was like, should I do this? Because I've literally got the dream job that I've always wanted. I'm running Bristol and Cardiff in the southwest and Wales, and I've got a great team, good culture, love the business and the people. Should I really? Am I mad? And she just said, Leo, if you're as good as I think you are, if you leave Robert Half and it doesn't work out with whatever you end up doing, they'll take you back in a heartbeat, or somebody else will, and in a similar job. And for me, and something just clicked in my mind. I said, you know what? That's so true. It sort of de-risked it for me in my mind. I'm just gonna do it. And then the final thing that really gave me the boost, and it was something good came out of something bad, really, was my dad passed away quite unexpectedly. So I came into some inheritance that I wasn't expecting, which again, that's a position of privilege. Not many people get that, and obviously it's not ideal that my dad passed away as a result of it, but it just meant that I had at least a 6-month buffer to look after and provide for my family without having to worry about bringing in money straight away. So it just gave me a bit more time to really think consciously about, what do I want this brand to be? What do I want the values to be? Let's build it on solid foundations and not rush it, and just do it properly, which was quite a luxury, really. But I guess other people who are not in that situation could do the same with a bank loan, for example, just to give you a bit of a buffer. But sorry, that was a long answer to your question.
No, it's a good one. It's a good one. And having a 6-month buffer, I think that's exactly what we tell people if they come to us and like, I'm thinking of starting a business. That's one of the things that I think you need in order to take the pressure off, because the whole recruitment life cycle, even if you got a new client and an exclusive or a retained job day one, by the time you fill it and the person starts and the money's in the bank, like, you're 3 months down the road anyway. And we all know that winning the work in the first place, especially from a standing start, that might be three months, right? So you're talking, that's where the 6 months comes in, right? So agree with that. But what's really interesting about your business, Leo, is intentionally set out to be very different from the vast majority of other recruitment companies. And like, just I spent some time on your website prior to this call, and it's coursefree.co.uk, and just the whole ethos and the now a lot of companies have values, right, that they've identified, and that's how they hire, and they try and create the culture around the values. But the whole B Corp thing puts a different dimension on it. So can you explain, first of all, what is a B Corp, and why was it important that you went down that road?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, a B Corp, in its simplest form, is almost like a B Corp to business is what fair trade is to coffee. It
Okay.
is that sort of stamp of approval that that business is an ethical organization with strong ESG or social environmental credentials. And in order to get the certification, you go through a rigorous audit process. So you have to show that you walk the walk and talk the talk. And there's 250 questions, and you have to evidence all of the answers that you give across multiple channels. So the whole B Corp thought process is similar to the concept of conscious capitalism, which is where the whole conscious recruitment core three came from. In that it's not just about shareholder value, it's about delivering value to all stakeholders holistically. So that's shareholders is one of the stakeholders, but then you've got employees, you've got your customers, you've got your community, you've got the planet, you've got your supply chain. So it's and you have to set your business up legally and with a legal commitment to those multiple stakeholders on Companies House and your articles of association. So you're locked into a commitment across those stakeholders, which is legally binding. So it's not just a badge. You know, you really do have to live it and breathe it. And the reason why I chose it, and I actually pursued it before I'd even started trading, was because it sets us up. It sets us up on the right path, but it also holds me accountable as a business and as a leader to make sure that everything that we're doing is to the highest standard, and we're held and we're checked and balanced on it.
Wow, super interesting. And why was that important to you? I mean, you mentioned obviously the accountability, but yeah, what's the genesis of that whole thought process?
So going back to how I sort of came up with the business concept, really, I started off with my values personally, and what I really hold true and care about, and that was quite a lot of self reflection and really understanding, okay, what does make me tick and what does frustrate me, and what, you know, when somebody stamps on my values, what are they and why, and um, so that discovered that first, and a lot of it, you know, was instilled in me, like I said, from my mum and my upbringing. Um, but but then from that, I said, right, okay, so these now are the values, and I love, you know, giving back and making a difference, and you know, I'm a big believer in karma. What comes around goes around, and you know, I really want to build a business that has impact hardwired into the business model. So I started researching, okay, what does that look like? And it's a shift away from traditional capitalism, which is all about draining the people and planet for the resources on it, and focusing on profit, to more conscious capitalism, which is that multi-stakeholder model, where you're looking holistically at all things, people and planet as well. So it's not people instead of profit. There obviously profit is there, and profit is the oxygen that keeps us alive, but it's not the reason why we're alive, if that makes sense. So conscious capitalism, I read up on that, and then that led me to B Corp, because that is very similar in terms of that thought process, and it just means that it just, for me, when I was setting up the business, everything I was implementing was then done through a B Corp lens, and as a startup, it made us mature way faster than we ever would have without it, because we're putting in policies, governance, frameworks, you know, employee handbooks, so all the things that you wouldn't even think about, like customer feedback, surveying your suppliers, the buildings that you're in, checking the sustainability credentials, you know, all the micro details that you'd never even think about without having a framework like that to really guide you. So that was the sort of thought process behind it.
Super interesting, Leo. And um, so, first of all, I totally buy into the idea of purpose and the like understanding your own values, but also your own why. And then what's the business why? Like, why do we do what we do? And of course, you may or may not have read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why,
Actually,
which,
that was one of the things that helped me with my self-reflection on my values and what the business became. So it was the golden circle of Simon
yeah.
Sinek that I love Simon.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So in our coaching program, the very first step is what's the vision? But then also what's the purpose and what are the values, right? Because that's kind of the foundation for everything else that comes after. And the part about vision is hard enough, but the really difficult part is the purpose. Like why recruitment? Why this particular industry? And why what's the meaning that you're attaching to this business? And people struggle with that. It's really hard to figure that out. Is mentally taxing, and but the the benefit, if you can get through that and really come up with something that is significant to you, then it makes your whole enterprise so much more attractive. If you can articulate and like the reason why you exist, apart from just making money, then that makes you more attractive to all those stakeholders. So investors, customers, employees, because very few business people can articulate that clarity of like, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And you attract opportunities and people who want to, you know, support that mission that you're on. But it is so difficult. And do you not, and with the B Corp, it sounds quite onerous. Like, did that not sort of distract you or slow you down from like in the first 6 months of any recruiting business, just getting new clients and deals on the board is so important. Like, did that slow you down, or what was the downside of this?
100%. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge time investment. Personally, over the 2 years it took me to get the certification, probably over 200 hours. And if I was starting up with more infrastructure and it wasn't just me on my own bootstrapped, then I'd probably have a help with an office manager or a project manager to help me, an admin assistant to help with all the paperwork. So it was an awful lot. I had a great consultant called Andy Hawkins who helped guide me through it and provided a lot of templates and things like that, which really helped with the process, and I really highly recommend him. But it was a lot. But it's who we are. So we had no choice but to do that. Otherwise, why do it? And I think if you go back to that golden circle of the why, right in the middle, um, we wanted to walk the walk from the start. We didn't want to just make these claims that we're a socially responsible, ethical business without anything to back it up. So, but then as a result, longer term, there is, and it's not why we did it, but there is definitely commercial value to being a purpose-driven business. Like you say, it attracts more customers. We've probably attracted at least 20% of our clients because of the fact that we are a B Corp and we're purpose-driven, and the vast majority of the people who work for us have joined us because we've got a real purpose and it's real, it's genuine. The values are more than words written on a wall, and people love the culture and working here. But it's different because you can feel it every single day because we've given 3% of revenue to these three good causes that we support. Every consultant feels it with every placement. The client, after every placement, gets a menu of which charity would you like to choose, where that 3% of this placement will go. And it even breaks it down to how many trees they want to plant, or how many young people they want to support through Bristol Sport Foundation, for example. So it's really, really tangible, and you can feel it every day. So it completely changes the mindset of our consultants, our team, our clients. So there is definitely a benefit to that, and I think there's a lot of studies out there that show B Corp purpose-driven businesses outperform those that aren't purpose driven from a growth and profitability standpoint, because I think people expect these days, well, customers are demanding it more first and foremost, but also people expect that when you're working with a socially responsible business, you're going to get a really good quality, and B, it's not going to be the cheapest. So it comes with real value. It's like if you're buying a Patagonia jacket, you get that lifelong guarantee with it. It's really, really good quality. They do an awful lot for the environment and the community, and people pay a premium for that. So commercially, it makes sense. Although that 3% is a lot. It equates. It's about 15% of our profit. So it's a huge amount, but that also forces me to run the business as well as I can and really keep a close eye on the finances and making sure that we're responsible from that perspective as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually before when I was thinking about this interview is 3% of your top line is a much bigger number when it gets to the bottom line, right? So that is a serious commitment. And the thing that's great about this, Leo, is that it's almost it's almost funny how many recruitment websites, when you visit them, they all say, "Oh, we're ethical recruiters." But what does that really mean, and how can you evidence that, right? And most cases, it's just it's a brand or a PR thing rather than anything substantial behind it. And it may be heartfelt, like maybe the person writing that on their website really feels like we care about our customers and we do things right and we follow a rigorous process or whatever the thought that goes into that. But you've taken it way further in terms of real like commitment to to that conscious recruiter principle, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's great to see sort of the impact that we've had so far in 2.5 years since we launched. We've given back over £75,000 to our local community and the environment. We've planted 23,000 trees. We've removed over 300 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. We volunteered, over 250 hours. And when you break that down in terms of the people impact, with Bristol Sport alone this year, for example, we funded 6,500 kids from disadvantaged backgrounds to have access to after school clubs. We've mentored and supported 85 young people from Babassa, from ethnic minorities of Bristol, through a 3-month mentorship program. So it's when you start to break down those figures and that to really tangible people impact, that's what gets a real kick out of it for me, and for the team. So it's quite nice to see that vision coming to life. But a long-term 2030 vision is to get to £150,000 per year of impact, which would just be incredible.
I love it. That is awesome. So the other thing that strikes me, Leo, is in terms of attracting talent to your business, it also gives you an advantage there because especially I think younger people coming into the workforce are maybe a bit jaded and disenfranchised from institutions, from government, from business, and are looking for more meaning attached to their work. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a huge trend, especially in the Gen Z community, that they just want more socially responsible products or services, or work for more socially responsible businesses. Um, we haven't yet tapped into that. Actually, we've got quite an experienced team here. So um, again, and then this is something I've never experienced before in 12 years of recruitment leadership for big corporates. Um, almost talent has come to us at Core 3. I've never used a rec to rec. We've 50% of the people here approach me, and then the rest I've approached them, but that they've really been interested by the purpose. It's something different, and it's an experienced team. So between us, there's 10 of us now, soon to be 11. We've got about 85 years combined recruitment experience. So that's average tenure of about 8 years, 8.5 per person. So it's and it's a slightly, the average age is probably, I don't know, like 30. 35. So we're not quite into that Gen Z yet. I can't remember exactly what age Gen Z are, but I think in future, once we've got the leadership infrastructure in place, which we're nearly there, we'll start bringing in more junior individuals, because then we'll have the team that can coach and develop them. And then, I think we'll continue to see the benefit of our purpose further down the line as well.
So this is a great segue, Leo, to talk about your growth journey, because in 2 years you've been
Two and a half. It's actually knocking on. It's by the end of March, it'll be 3 years.
Okay. So 3 years and you've gotten to 10 people already and soon to be 11. Can you walk us through the kind of highlights of that journey, and what were some of the challenges?
Highlights, definitely the first job I picked up was a good one.
When was this?
So this was March 2022.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even started trading yet. And I was just sort of reaching out to a few people in my network to let them know that I was doing it. And at the time, I was really conscious to honor the restrictive covenant and and not reproach anyone I had spoken to in the last sort of year or so. But so I was going way back to really old relationships, and this one chap, he's been a great help to me. Just referred me over to somebody and said, look, I think they're looking for some accountants. And I got a call, and Rob rang me and just said, yeah, I probably need like 4 people. Can you help? And I said, I haven't got a website yet. I haven't started trading. I haven't got a CRM or LinkedIn recruiter or anything like that, but just give me 24 hours and I think I can make it happen. So
Awesome.
I literally switched everything on, and sort of did a dry run with him before we'd actually launched the business. So we sold four retainers and got that locked in straight away and filled those 4 jobs before we'd officially started trading as Core 3. But that was a great confidence booster, because I tested out the CRM, I tested out LinkedIn Recruiter, that making sure everything was working, the process, and I was really happy with the tech and the tools that we chose. So that was a massive confidence booster, especially as they were retained as well, because it was cash in the bank, felt good. And then from there, I guess successes have just been the growth journey, really. And I think some of the clients that we've won, we're really, really proud of. We're working with some awesome B Corps, some purpose-driven businesses like Vivo Barefoot. We've rebuilt Mila's finance team. We've worked with some really cool companies. But the people journey for me is the biggest one. I think just how we've evolved the culture, really embedded the values, what they mean, created an environment which really helps our people thrive, and they're genuinely in such a good place right now. It just feels good, and it hasn't always been good. And we'll get onto the challenges in a minute. But I think the big, then other than that, the obvious highlights are the B Corp certification, winning the REC's Startup of the Year award, which is just insane. We was not expecting that at all. So that was just a jaw-dropping moment for us. And then the year after, winning sort of Business of the Year with the Business Leader Awards as well. So just starting to get recognized for the things that we're doing, and that actually is quite different. And it's just been a fun journey.
We'll talk about the people part of the journey and then the challenges in a second. But wow, what a strong start to get your first 4 retainers before you've officially launched. And so that's just a fantastic launch pad for the business. And also, in terms of strategy, you mentioned something which I think is really valuable for everybody to think about, is all the relationships that you have throughout your career, and how many of those have kind of fallen by the wayside, but the value of just reconnecting with people. It's so basic, but we're always so focused on, the next customer, the next deal, that you were forced, because of your restrictive covenant, you kind of were having to think bigger about your network and who to approach. But that's no matter whether you're starting a business or you've been in business a long time, or you're a recruiter listening to this, is do you have a strategy for reaching back out, reactivating past clients, and then keeping in touch with people who you've worked with in the past? I think that's a useful takeaway.
So I think probably one of the most valuable things for me early on, I mean, this one retainer example aside, because that was, genuine networking and outreach, the old school way. But then when I started trading, we've always been really active on LinkedIn. So personal brand on LinkedIn, putting out regular content has just been a game changer for us because personally I've got 12 years worth of connections on LinkedIn. I've got 13,000 followers. There's no way I could keep in touch with all of those people that I've placed or worked with over 12, 13 years. But by posting content, 3 times a week, it's almost like, hi, I'm here. Remember me? It's sort of, I'm still rocking and rolling. And it was just last week I had a candidate ring me. Well, they were a candidate. I placed them 9 years ago. Haven't spoken to them since. I did obviously speak to them early on when they were first placed, but not for about 8 years. And they said, "Oh, hi Leo. Noticed you launched your own business. I love everything about Core 3. I feel like I know you and your team really, really well already." So I didn't even have to pitch Core 3 or the services because she knew everything she needed to know because she'd seen it on LinkedIn. And she just said, "Look, I'm running my own business now. We need an accountant. Can you help?" And that was another retained piece of business that just came out of nowhere. And if I wasn't posting, then there's no way she would have remembered me placed her 9 years ago. Do you know what I mean? So that's been a big one for us.
Definitely. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because this is one of the strategies that we teach our clients, is to really build that personal brand by sharing valuable content on LinkedIn on a consistent basis. But the challenge to get people who aren't already bought into that concept is they're like, but what's the ROI? Like, it seems like a lot of time and effort. So and you gave a really good case study there, but what do you feel has been the overall ROI from that concerted effort on LinkedIn?
There's a lot of tangible and non-tangible ROI, I would say. I think the tangible, I probably pick up one job a month from it, personally, which, if you think average fee value of 10K, that speaks volumes. But then you times that by all the team doing it. Their networks might not be as big as mine, but they are starting to pick up business from it. But I think the intangible side of it is that suddenly, as a startup business that was completely unknown, we were suddenly known. And and the clients feel like they know us when they've never spoken to us. Every time our team calls a finance director, they're like, "Oh, Core 3, I've seen you on LinkedIn. I love what you're doing." So it's like no call is a cold call. It just makes the whole sales cycle much warmer and much more familiar, and they can see we're actually doing something different, and we're not just purpose driven, but also really, really good at our jobs. So we can deliver a great service. So I think, I wouldn't, I'm on my soapbox, but I'm not going to get off it because it's a game changer for us. But it does not remove the traditional relationship building that you have to do. It does not replace the phone call and the conversation and the meetings. Like we get in front of our clients, we meet them face to face. Same with our candidates. It will never replace that, but it just makes that first call a lot warmer and a lot easier.
Well said. Absolutely. So obviously you're leading from the front there, but do you require your team to also be active on posting LinkedIn, or do they just see what you're doing and go, wow, that obviously is working, so I'd like to do that as well? Like, is it a KPI, or is it just kind of like, what's your company policy on it?
So we haven't put it in as a set KPI yet. A lot of the team are doing it because they see the results that I'm getting from it, and those that are um, keen, then they get training on it, and we upskill them on how to do it properly. It's something we're going to roll out to the whole business. But at the moment, the leadership are expected to lead by example. So for them, we want them to post at least 3 valuable pieces of content a week, connect with 100 connections a week, but then engage with those connections. So when they accept a connection request, or if they like a post or comment on a post, then drop them a voice note. Say thanks for connecting. We'd love to invite you to one of our inner circle communities for finance leaders. Can we start a conversation? And then it leads on to the business development. So it's not just posting and getting engagement, it's the follow-up strategy behind it to then build relationships.
Okay, this is fascinating, Leo. Can we just do a slight tangent here, because I'm really interested in the business development follow-up process. So why do you start with a voice note instead of either a text or even a video message?
Um, it's just high speed, low drag. So video is great, and I love video messages, but it's a bit of a blocker sometimes if you want to set yourself up, get a if you're bothered by that, get a ring light set up, start sending all your videos out. You got to have a quiet place, no noise in the office. Whereas a voice note is just hold up your phone, tap a button, and go. So you can do it anywhere during your BD focus time, and you don't have to overthink it. And then it's better than a message because it's different. The client's getting text messages every single day, whereas a voice note is like, oh, what's that? I'm going to click play, and oh, that's different. I actually hear the voice. I hear, you get a sort of emotional connection to that person or that human being on the other end because you can hear their tone and their passion or whatever it might be. So it just gets a much higher response rate.
So we're talking about a voice note via the LinkedIn messaging app, right? So you need to use your phone for that because it's not on the desktop version of LinkedIn. But I love that, and it is so the speed, I guess, is the huge advantage. The speed, and also then they hear your voice, so it's more of a human connection, and it's a little bit different. What kind of response do you expect from that?
There's more than 50%.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting because so this is something worth testing for our audience. We've encouraged our clients to experiment with it, and some love it and get good response, and some have not really had much from it. So, but I guess
I think the difference is if you're just sending them out cold, then the response rate won't be good. But if you're sending them to people who've accepted your connection request recently or have engaged with some of your content recently, then you're much more of a familiar entity. So they're more likely to press play.
maybe it's the recency that's important, because I don't think you can send a voice note if you're not already connected.
No.
Can you? So, but maybe it's they've recently connected or they've recently engaged. So you're already kind of on their radar, and then they get the voice note and they're like, oh, I wonder what that is, and listen into it. So that's interesting. But then the second thing you said is your inner circle community for finance leaders. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, so that's something that we've developed over the years, and I started out doing the podcast, so the Conscious Finance podcast, and that was just to try and create a bit of value, really, for our clients and candidates, and that explores how finance can influence meaningful change. So whether that is purpose, planet, ESG, people, finance transformation, whatever it might be, business growth stories. It's geared specifically towards our audience. So it started with that, and then as we started having more conversations with our clients, they're like, "This is great. This is really, really different." And they said, "Oh, I'd love to get involved in some more conversations around that." So then we started building roundtable events. So we've got a few different communities already. So we've got the Tech CFO Network in Bristol, which we partner with a corporate finance sponsor for that. We've got the SME FD network. We've got the Women in Finance network. We've just launched a non-exec director network. And all of that is basically geared around getting like-minded people around a table to share common challenges and ideas, because the CFO job is a lonely place often. It's the same with any leadership role. Often it's quite lonely. So to be sat around a table of other people that are in a similar boat to you, they're getting so much value out of it. The last one we did, some of the CFOs were like, this feels like counseling session because it's like it's just great, and it's good to be part of a community like this. And we encourage the conversation to keep going in between these roundtables, so they're a series. It's not just one-off event, and we then continue that conversation through WhatsApp or email or Slack, whatever it might be, so that it becomes a self-serving community, which is really sticky. And the clients getting an awful lot of value from it, but it's not a sales pitch to Core 3. It's all about providing value. And again, it's a great reason to call for our whole team then. So they've just got, rather than just calling up saying, have you got any jobs? It's much more meaningful. It's much more valuable, and the clients actually want to be a part of it.
Love this, Leo. And we have a few clients who do variations on this. So I'm just curious to learn a bit more about the way that you run it. So is this in person or is this virtual, or is it a combination?
In person, yeah.
So the meetings are in person, and what kind of frequency?
Once a quarter for each one. So we've got, like we said, we've got about 4 or 5 different networks at the moment. So we're running between sort of 3 and 5 a quarter for each network, but we empower our consultants to become hosts of their own networks, if you like. So Mika ran the Women in Finance Roundtable yesterday. Rich is running the SMEFD network. I'm doing the Tech CFO network. Then we've got the London leadership doing a NED network. So yeah, it's great for them because they get to become a real voice in their industry, and from a relationship development standpoint, it's just next level.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so where are you hosting these? In your office or in a hotel, or in like what's the venue? And because that's, I think, what puts small recruiting firms off, like Michael Page, Robert Half, these guys have deep pockets, but small SME where you're really watching every penny and you're thinking, wow, hosting an event, that's going to be pretty expensive.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. I mean, for us, it probably costs about 350 quid per event because we're booking a nice meeting room. We're putting on, breakfast rolls and coffees for all the guests. So it's catered. So we want to do it to a high standard. So it could be a lot cheaper than that. If we wanted to use the meeting rooms in our office, we could do it for free and get, some pastries in and do it for, 20 quid. But we want it to feel as quality as it feels when you work with Core 3. So we haven't scrimped on that. But we've managed to now, because they've built momentum, we've actually got sponsors for them. So they self-fund. They're paid for by the sponsors, which is great.
And so does that mean the sponsors get to attend, or what's the value for the sponsor?
Yeah, so they get a seat at the table, but we're very clear with our sponsors it can't be a sales pitch.
Right.
It's a networking opportunity. It's an opportunity for to have a platform. They've got the sponsors have to be related to them, so or their sector. So, for example, for our Tech CFO network, we've got a tech corporate finance business that fund tech businesses growth to sponsor it. So for them, the value to them is they rarely get an audience with local good SME growing CFOs and FDs without when they're suddenly wheeled out for a pitch. So to get in at sort of grassroots level and build relationships with these businesses is amazing for them. So but they also then provide an awful lot of value and insight to the members of the community because they can see it from a different perspective. Like, what are investors looking for? Like, what when we're going to fundraise or when we're going to invest in a company, what are the metrics and what sort of rigor would we expect to see from a finance perspective? So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So and then as these communities grow, we see them, these sponsors help enabling us to do amazing things like get keynote speakers and sponsor, big networking events and wine tasting evenings, whatever it might be, so that we can just keep growing and adding value.
It's awesome, Leo. And so in terms of the format of these events, do you have speakers, or is it more of a discussion where and then is it you and your consultants who are facilitating that discussion, or do you have different people chairing it? I'm just trying to get a.
Yeah, so we chair them, and it's really not rocket science. Like we survey all of the attendees before they come. So we ask them what they care about, what they want to talk about, what they want to get out of this event, and then we theme the discussion topics based on what the audience want to talk about. So then we just create some nice open questions about those top 2 or 3 topics, and we just intro it and then pass it over to the audience, and the conversations sort of roll on themselves. So it all really, as a host of a roundtable, all you have to do is just sort of keep the conversation on track, and make sure that everybody has a fair part to play in it. And that's about it, really. You don't have to be an expert in whatever you're talking about. You're the one just asking the question, and then it's over to the experts to answer them, really.
Having said that, there is a skill, like it is a skill to facilitate group discussion, and there's a skill and a confidence level to be able to do that. But also, the benefit is the positioning and the authority that it confers, because even though you're not a subject matter expert, the fact that you are organizing, hosting, and facilitating that roundtable makes you a leader, right, within that community. And so then people, and especially because you're not pitching, you're bringing value, people perceive you in a whole different light to the other recruiters that are like calling them got any jobs, right? You're on a whole nother level.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess you're right. I mean, we do help coach our team on how to host and how to hold that conversation, and I'm often there just to back them up, just in case they sort of lose a bit of confidence halfway through. But touch wood, haven't had to interject yet,
Okay.
because we just sort of just coached them beforehand, and they're all doing really well, to be fair.
Amazing. So let's talk about the people then. And it sounds like you've made a conscious decision, at least in the beginning, to bring on experienced hires. So can you talk about the strategy and then how that progressed? Like you mentioned, your first deal was before you started. What was your first hire, and how have things kind of developed?
So yeah, I think to begin with, my hiring wasn't great, if I'm honest.
Okay.
And the good people, good human beings, but not necessarily good recruiters. And I think yeah, I almost dropped my standards because I was a startup, and nobody knew who Core 3 were. And when I started interviewing people, I was like, "Oh my god, you want to work for me? That's amazing! Yeah, come on, let's just do it." Um, so I had a moment of madness. So early on, I took on 2 people who didn't have actually one didn't have any recruitment business experience. One was a sales manager, and the other was 6 months of recruitment experience. But they didn't end up working out for one reason or another. So at that point, I just made the decision, because of everything I had on my plate in terms of building a business from scratch, wearing all the hats that a founder has to wear, going through the B Corp certification. I was like, right, I'm just going to take my time and get some experienced people, because training up rookies is something I just don't have the resource to do right now, and I wouldn't want to let somebody down because of that. And I could cope with those first 2. Like we had some really good training, and they were developing okay, but I think, like, as we scaled, I could just see the future unfolding as I'm not going to be able to continue this. So I need some experienced people. So then I just really started to focus on that, and I had a couple of, and it was just a couple of people approached me out of the blue, and I was like, oh my god, this is different. This never happened before. Like, in terms of attracting talent in recruitment, you never have people knocking on your door, at least with my experience before. So I was just quite fortunate, really. And I think, again, off the LinkedIn content, off all of the branding and awareness that we've raised out there, it's starting to turn some heads, and people were reaching out saying, this is cool. It's a bit different. Would you be open to having a chat about, Core 3 and me? And so we did. And we've got some really good couple of first experienced hires in. And that just gave us the platform then to sort of continue on that trajectory. But it's not all been rainbows and butterflies along the way. There's definitely been some challenges, but I think we've just got it right now in terms of our hiring process, how we attract, how we retain, how we develop. I mean, even as a startup, we invested in external training every single week coming in for our team, which, for a business that's only 12 months trading, that was pretty unheard of. But I guess I've benefited from working in a big corporate and seeing what good looks like. So I want that to feel as good as it possibly can, even when we're small and growing. So yeah.
That's awesome, Leo. And yeah, we often tell our clients who are scaling that, like, act as if you are already the company you want to be, right? And if that's a business that really invests in people and is constantly, providing learning and development, allowing people to level up and progress, then you can't wait and that hope that will show up when, like, 5 years down the line. You have to put that in place now, because that's actually going to be the mechanism that propels your growth. So you mentioned the setback with losing your first two didn't work out. How did you deal with that? Because often the reason people sort of take tentative steps to growing and then retreat is an experience exactly like that, where they think, like, okay, I can build well on my own and I've got a good, revenue for a one-man business, but I'd like to grow and hire other people. And then they hire someone or a couple of people and it doesn't work out. And then they're like, oh, I'm better off just myself. I'm not going to go down that road. So how did you deal with that setback?
I guess in recruitment, we're all pretty resilient, right? That's the name of your
True. Well,
podcast.
that's absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I think that, for me, I just sort of bounce back fairly easily with stuff like that. And I think that comes with miles on the clock in leadership. I've built teams for many years and had 35 people over at Robert Half, and hired and trained and retained a lot of people. So it's it happens. But I think what set me clear on my path was having a really clear vision from the start and having a really clear North Star that I was aiming towards. And I set my 3-year plan right from the beginning. So I knew I wanted to get to 5 by the end of year 1, 10 by the end of year 2, and 15 by the end of year 3. And then there was revenue and impact goals attached to all of those. So I was like, right, we're doing this. This is what's happening. There's no two ways about it. So let's just crack on.
100%. It's that commitment. Like, this is what we're doing. And so, okay, we lost 2, but we're still going to get to 5, right? That's definitely happening. What have been some of the other challenges or setbacks along the way?
So probably the two that stand out really, culture and cash flow, are probably the two ones I would say. So I think when you're scaling early on, it's really hard to define a culture and actually, put something in place. Especially when you're in a 4-person small office, and if you've got one bad egg in there, or if you've got one person who comes in a bad mood, huffing and puffing, you can feel it in those small 4 walls. So there were moments where we really had to work very hard on the culture early on, even when there was only 4 people, to make sure that we were setting the standards of what our values meant and how they translated to behaviors and expectations right from the beginning. And there's loads of stuff we did on that, and realizing what they mean and involving the team to have a voice in it and everything else. We even took people out into the woods with no phones, no computers, no work chat, and we just talked about what it meant and got to know each other on a much deeper level, which did really, really help. Actually, we now do an annual Core 3 retreat, digital detox, for 2 days every year, which is part of our culture development. But but now we're in that sort of critical mass where we've got 11 people. We're in a much bigger office. If like you've got room to breathe, the culture feels good. We've got our hiring right, so the people that are in now are aligned to our values, and they're the right people in the right seats, which makes a huge difference. And we've evolved, what the values mean. So that's one. And then the cash flow one was a big learning for me, because obviously as a director, Robert Half, you don't ever get exposed to cash flow. You don't really know what it means. You just sort of have hiring triggers right when you get to 15 or 12.5K per head, then let's get the next hire in, and that's the sort of growth plan, and you just follow those metrics that have been tried and tested for decades. Whereas you run your own business is it's a completely different kettle of fish. And things were going incredibly well in year one, and we hired, and then we started realizing, okay, we can hire some experienced people now, and everything was good in terms of cash flow and profitability, and we got quite bullish, and I probably got a bit overconfident, and I carried on hiring and got some really good experienced people in, and but then. And if the market continued as it was, which at that point was amazing, we would have been absolutely rosy. But then suddenly Russia invaded Ukraine, and the markets, the economy was a challenge, and the markets tightened, and I just heavied up some really experienced people who are not cheap. And it takes people like that time to see ROI. So that was a really tough period of time for about 6 months, where every single month I was checking the bank account thinking, am I going to be able to afford payroll this month? Because this is tight. And again, complete transparency, we were loss making for about 6 months, which was horrible feeling. And as a founder of a business, you're responsible for the livelihoods of the people in your team. That was a massive learning opportunity for me. And I lent into it as an opportunity. And I was advised by one of my business coaches, you're going to have to cut a couple of people. And I did not want to do that, because I believed in every single person we had on the team sheet. And thankfully, we managed to get through it without a single person having lost their job. But as a team, we got together and we said, right, how are we going to get through this? And we all made a commitment. We need more accountability. We need more visibility on what we're doing, our metrics. We need to measure success better. So we grew up an awful lot from a process standpoint and from a metric standpoint. And I'm not naturally a KPI driven person, but it's forced us all to become much more into the detail, especially more outputs rather than inputs, and looking at things like ratios and more meaningful metrics, not just how many calls have you made today. And we've actually evolved it a lot since then. We've implemented OKRs, which are even more meaningful than KPIs, which is probably a whole nother podcast. But I think with that, then the team rallied together and they really wanted that accountability. And now, again, we've benefited from that 6-month awful period. Now we're in a position where we're better than we've ever have been from a both profitability and cash flow perspective. And we're feeling really, really confident but never again will I make that mistake. So, it's not growth at the expense of people. We want to do it at the right pace, so that people are supported. There's good security there, and people will also get developed in the right way, and the managers aren't too stretched to give them the time they need to get them to where they need to get to. So, yeah.
Hard lesson. Great job turning that around, Leo. That is, when you're describing that, I was, really identifying with you. I think this is the part of starting a business that people don't consider, right? Is you are the one who has to make payroll, and you really feel that responsibility. And the people who are working in the business are kind of oblivious to that side of things, and the pressure you're under, which it is. You absolutely, I can totally relate to that. But then the 6 months loss making, did you have the cash reserves, or how did you get through that period?
It was literally to the wire every month. So we scraped it within 10 grand each time. We personally, I got back on the tools. So I was off. I was not off the tools. I was still picking up business, but I was passing it out to the team, and I was more focused on team development. But I just got back on the phones and started picking up a lot more business again, and that really gave us a boost, and getting more retained business, which helps with that sort of cash flow as well. Calling in some favors from some clients who maybe had 30-day payment terms, saying, "Can you pay today? Is that right?" So
Yeah, no kidding.
some good clients gave us some good boosts in that time. But yeah, honestly, the biggest learning for me, I think any business founder probably needs to go through that, because if you don't, and you always look through rose-tinted glasses, you probably never keep a long enough eye on that sort of future cash flow forecasting. Whereas when you've gone through it, and thankfully I got through it without having to make any sacrifices, I think it's been such a game changer for us and how we run the business.
This is the thing, like when I look back at the really tough times that I've been through in my entrepreneurial journey, and it absolutely sucks at the time. It's like, it's just horrible. But then if you get through it, you do emerge stronger and better because it forces you to really adapt and to innovate and really, you know, level up in so many different areas that, it does at least in my experience, it has always led to something good, but at the time, man, it's horrendous. What you mentioned metrics there, and I'm a big believer in knowing your numbers and using data to try and improve. Um, what do you consider to be the most meaningful metrics that you guys pay attention to?
Good question. I think for us now, it's OKRs, which is for those that haven't come across OKRs, they're a very different way of looking at things. It's a top down and bottom up approach. So the business set what their goals are and their vision for the year. You break that down to a quarterly level for the business goals. The teams then take that, go away, and each division pulls together what their role is to play in that quarterly vision of the business vision. Then once the team have their goals set, then the individuals break that down another level, and then you track all that through OKR software, so you can see sort of the progress through in the one-to-ones. You're sort of moving the dial each week to show that we are progressing as a business, as a team, and as individuals. So it's much more collective, and people have a part in setting their own OKRs as long as they're aligned to the team, as long as that's aligned to the business. So from an accountability but also buy-in perspective, it's amazing. It's great from a transparency perspective, and I've never we implemented it in December going into January this year, and I've never felt more prepared for the new financial year than now. Like everybody is so clear on what we're doing, where we're going, and broken it down to that level. We've done goal setting in the past, and we did that, in previous life as well. But you set a goal, and then people forget about it. Whereas this software is sort of the one-to-ones happen in the platform as well. So then you're moving the dial every single one-to-one, so that it's constantly front of mind. And we also put personal goals in there. So if they want to save for a mortgage or save for their wedding, you can track that and move it along in the one-to-ones as well. So that's just from a buy-in perspective, the team are absolutely loving that at the moment. So that's that, and each one of the OKRs is aligned with each one of our values as well. So it helps solidify those values day to day into our operations.
Love that, Leo. What's the OKR software?
It's called Leapsome.
Okay, I'm going to check that out. That sounds really cool. Leo, is there anything? I mean, by the way, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on today that we haven't discussed yet?
There's probably loads of things we could talk about. But no, it's been great. Thank you so much, Mark, for having me. And hopefully it's just given a bit of a snapshot of our journey and where we're going. But we're really excited for the future. We're in 2030. We want to get to 40 people with 5 million of net fee income and 150K of impact per year. And that's predominantly going to be across Bristol. And we've recently launched our London operation as well. So our London office is now live. If anybody wants to get involved in the journey, feel free to reach out to me directly, and hopefully you can be a part of Core 3 in the future.
Fantastic, Leo. Well, look, you're only 3 years in. I'd love to do this again and see how you're progressing towards that 2030 vision.
That'd be amazing. I look forward to it. Cheers, Mark.
All right. Thanks, Leo. Take care. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out some of my other episodes. You'll see 1 or 2 suggested episodes on the screen now.